everyone, welcome to another comic review. Today we're going to be reviewing another comic that is currently funding on Indiegogo, one that I have had the pleasure to get a preview and give you a preview review. This one is titled Rammur, and it's another one from Charles Santino and friends. I just wanted to make sure I credited everyone. It's Charles Santino and friends. So what is Rammur? Well, it's basically a bunch of short stories that take place in this futuristic police state. It's the typical government bad, gotta rebel type stuff that teenagers love so much. And our main character is basically a thief who works for himself. You know, he's a lone wolf. He's a bad boy for life. And while he is the main character of this comic, there are a few other short stories that are kind of like spin-offs, where they have another side character come in and do a brief story based on that. So this comic features different artists throughout each little short story, but for the most part, the aesthetic really reminds me of the classic Batman the Animated Series, which is a nice aesthetic. I like it. It's kind of cartoonish with the addition of more mature themes. This first artist I would say is pretty good, although I do have to mention that the artifact is not quite in perspective in this. I mean, really, I guess the paintings also don't really look in perspective. You know, a few questionable perspective things with the artist. Now, I will say this is another one of those stories where it's clear that the writer is more of a writer than an artist. It's especially clear when you see the thumbnails at the end of the book. No offense, no offense. And my thumbnails don't look great either. But what I really mean is this comic really does have a lot of narration, and it feels a lot less like a comic and more like a book. That's not to say that there isn't art, but where there is art, there is also narration boxes explaining what's happening in the art. You know, like for example, Rammur used the distraction of inspecting the sculpture to bring his sight line up to his opponents and take aim. Yeah. I can see that. They hesitated ever so briefly at this stunning development. In the next fraction of a second, as the two men reacted to the attack, Rammur's blast made their way towards them at 315 meters per second. Yes, he's definitely blasting. The second man's shot missed Rammur, but damaged the sculpture. Actually, you could have shown that one. You could have shown the shot missing him and instead hitting the sculpture. But you can definitely see what I mean when I say that there's a lot of narration. It's weird to transition from doing books to doing comics because you gotta get used to just letting the art show what's going on and not explaining what's going on. And I think in a way, a lot of people who are both artists and writers, they also sometimes will put a lot of narration, not because they don't have an artist's mind, but rather because they're insecure about the reader not understanding what's going on, which is a different problem, but still a problem. Also, some of these narration boxes explain Rammur's thoughts, but that's what thought bubbles are for. It's a little bit strange to include all of the thoughts in the narration as well, unless you're writing a book and you're narrating. And I think it would have actually helped if we saw a few more thought bubbles from Rammur, rather than just a narrator explaining how he feels, because it would give him a little bit more personality to see like how he talks in his inner thoughts, you know? That's how it is with every character. Sometimes it's not just as simple as explaining how a character feels. Sometimes you want to see the character trying to figure out for themselves how they feel. In a way, the comic kind of feels like it's being told like a campfire story, you know what I mean? And you know, in general, I don't really mind that if you want to just like do a super stylistic chapter done in that way, but it's for what is mostly the whole book. But I'm sure you want to hear what I think of the stories themselves and less about the writing style. Overall, I think the stories are pretty simple. The first one I'd probably say I enjoyed the best, which is probably why it's the first one. You know, they say that a writer always wants to put their best story at the front of a short story collection. I mean, once again, it's a lot of telling and not a lot of showing. Like, this guy is supposed to be like a bad guy or whatever, but I don't really get to see how he's bad. He seems like a hard ass, but not necessarily like bad. It's also kind of weird because this is supposed to be his girlfriend? I don't know, Rammur I don't know. I don't even know what the relationship is. Because when they were first introduced to this guy, it sounds like he's treating her like his adopted daughter or something. And then Rammur refers to her as his girl. So then it seems like they're dating. But then he refers to her as more of a worker. So it's like, I don't even know. I don't know which relationship is the correct relationship between these two. Now, I will say some of the tech is kind of drawn cool in the way that they illustrate this comic. Like, I kind of like his little ectoskeleton he got going here with the blasters and the jet boosters down below. It looks cool. It looks kind of like a janky, futuristic. And the police in this comic are typically robots, which is fine. There's a lot of different interpretations of what like robot police would be like though. As far as I can tell, it doesn't look like these robot police have any non-lethal options. So I guess that's something. So you got stuff like lasers and robots and jet boosters. But then at the same time, you have some stuff that looks like it's moving back in time rather than forward, like this janky looking drone. Bright green too, so it's definitely not a stealth drone. And it's supposed to be explosive, but it doesn't look like there's any explosives on it. Oh my god, look at this giant remote control. It looks like the controller for one of those remote control cars. So this is like one of those futures where it's like some stuff is higher tech than what we have now, and some stuff is either what we have now or below what we have now. So it's interesting. There's a lot of different interpretations of futures that are like that, where like one portion of technology advances and everything else stays the same. And they also have this statue of, I guess, their leader goddess person, which is also like leaving little breadcrumbs to what the overall world looks like without necessarily giving you a big info dump on everything about the world, which I appreciate. You know, I don't have to know everything about a world to understand what's going on in a story. You know, most of these stories I think are kind of bummers. You definitely see the main character kill a lot of people that you don't really know. And, you know, the main character himself is just kind of like this moody one of those moody, edgy characters. And I think it would have been a lot more interesting to see the more human sides of him rather than just focusing on all the edginess. I wouldn't say that it was necessarily bad, just not something that I would be looking for in a comic. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Rammur. If you would like to go check out the campaign and check out more details on this comic, I'll leave a link down below. It's also fair to mention, you know, since we're talking about future and police, I know some of you have been waiting for a Sonic City Witch update. We're like literally this close to being done what could be a first issue. That is going to release digitally on the website. It's going to be a black and white interior. We're going manga style. But you know, I like manga, so I can't imagine that black and white is really that much of a downgrade. As far as the Ellie campaign goes, still live, funding in demand. I'm awaiting on the books, and as soon as I get those, I'll start sending those out. So thank you guys for joining me for another comic review. Leave your own thoughts and opinions down below in the comments section. That's what it's there for. Remember to like the video, and I will see you guys next time. Till then, bye!
Program restart. Shutting down all systems.